Thank you. You know, hard to imagine a better place to be on a Saturday night than with you sitting here in a chair.
Likewise, thank you.
By the way, I've done a Sunday night sitting with you in a chair. That was pretty good too.
And you were great.
Tom and I really enjoyed it. It was very helpful to us. You know, so one of the things that we've done with anybody who's come up here is just try to get a little bit personal and learn a little bit more about you. Can you talk a little bit about how you grew up and how it was you became conservative?
It started in a log cabin. You know, it's a good question. I don't think about it that much. When I was 13 or 14 years old, I would watch these shows on TV and these Sunday shows. I was involved in precinct work for the Republican Party here and there. But it's funny. I didn't like people telling me what to do.
It's so surprising.
I mean, if somebody had something to tell me that made sense, that was fine, but I didn't like people telling me what to do. You know, you're a young kid. And then I'm hearing about things that the government is telling people to do and so forth, and I'd say to my parents, what's that all about? Now, my parents were Jewish. My father passed away in October. He was 93. My mother passed away in February. She was almost 88. And I think it's due to them in many respects. They were always Republicans. Jewish Republicans from Philadelphia. Even more amazingly, they voted for Barry Goldwater. So I said, Dad, you and Mom voted for Barry Goldwater? I said, how did that happen? He said, oh, I knew all that crap they were saying about him couldn't be true, so I voted for him. That's kind of my ideology.
So the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, does it?
But honestly, the weirdest thing, you know, as I got a little older, I was watching the oil companies and OPEC and watching leftists, you know, senators and all say we need to control the oil company. It all just struck me as bad. It struck me as wrong. Then I would read some of the greats, you know, Hayek and Mises. I'd watch Buckley here and there. I'd watch Friedman. You start educating yourself, and light bulbs go off, which is basically, I want to be left alone. Other people should be left alone. And who are these people who are constantly telling us what to do? And so I think that instinctively is kind of how it happened.
Yeah, I love that. We talk a lot about there's a very common character trait among the people here. I think you embody this character trait. We say it's defiance. You seem like you're a little bit defiant, maybe.
A little here and there.
You know, so everybody here obviously knows that you spent some time in the Reagan Administration. As we look back through the lens of history, for all of us, that's sort of a storied time, right? The real height of conservatism in our government and the great ideas being discussed. And Chuck talked earlier about the scholarship that was being done. You guys were really in a war there. A lot of incredible stuff happened during that era. I wonder if there's a personal story that sticks out for you during that time that maybe people don't know about Reagan himself.
I'll tell you a story about Reagan, which shows you the character the man had. He was a remarkable man, much smarter than he was ever given credit for. Very, very well read. You know, when you would look at his library, in his home library, he had all kinds of incredible books in there. Chuck Cooper and I were honored to work for a fabulous man by the name of Edwin Meese. He not only was a fabulous moral man, smart, solid, understood the law, understood the Constitution, and he populated the Department of Justice like it had never been populated before, with originalists up and down the ladder. He decided to take on the left, and they decided to try and destroy him. And they unleashed independent counsel investigations against the most ethical man I've ever known in my life, right, Chuck? While he was in office, you know, he lost his son in a horrible accident, then he lost his grandson in a horrible accident. the fortitude was remarkable, and yet a very compassionate, thoughtful man. And he decided, I don't believe I've ever told this story, he decided to resign. He decided to resign, not because he wanted to resign, he was prepared to duke it out to the very end, because he hadn't done anything wrong, but because he didn't want to hurt the election chances of somebody he'd become quite friendly with, the Vice President of the United States, George H.W. Bush. And he said to me, I cannot allow me to be used to defeat him. So, near the end, I was contacted by one of the individuals around him, I was his chief of staff then, who said, Mr. Meese wants to see you. So I went and saw him. I said, yes, sir. He said, come on, we're going over to the Oval Office. So it was Ursula, Ed, his wife, Brad Reynolds, a few others of us who happened to be there. He was resigning there and then. We went into the Oval Office, and President Reagan came out, and Nancy Reagan came out. And Ed Meese said, I can't tell you what an honor it's been. And this is a man who's been by his side through the governorship, all the tough times. And Ronald Reagan would have stuck with him no matter what, because that's the kind of man Ronald Reagan was. And then Reagan says to Meese, I want to apologize to you. And Meese says, looks at him like, why? Because none of this would be happening to you but for me. They want me, they can't get me, so they went after you. So there's a moment that now you know about.
That's incredible. That's some incredible character. We need to see more of that in public office. Thanks for sharing that with us. You know, Mark, you've written a lot of books. I know that you write your own books. That's kind of unusual these days. I've heard stories about how you write books, about stacks of books on your dining room table. I'm sure Julie has to deal with this.
No, she made me move them off the dining room table. Now I'm in the corner of the house. No, I'm just kidding, but they're off the dining room table.
Can you talk about your process for writing books? So, like, how do you get the ideas, and then how do you work your way through it?
Well, it takes me 12, 14, 16 months to write a book because, I'm doing other things. But as Julie will tell you, it is an enormously long task because I'm up. If I have an idea at 3 in the morning, I go down and I start working on it. If I read something that catches my attention, I look for the original source. Go for original sources as much as I possibly can. Well, if you look at the series of books I've written, the first one, Men in Black, is because I didn't think there was an honest description being made about the Supreme Court of the United States. And so I wrote that book, my first book, and it shoots up on the New York Times bestseller list. So, of course, the left starts attacking it. And there was a book out at the same time by some law professor from some law school who had written a book about the Supreme Court, very complimentary, and I think he sold 5,000 copies. That damn thing wound up selling 300,000 copies. My next book was about my dogs. My new publisher, Simon & Schuster, I told them, I have an idea about a book I want to write. It's an idea I've had for 20 years. They said, what is it? I said, well, it's about liberty and tyranny. I said, I'm working through it. I said, but I'm not writing it until I write this book about my dogs.
I'm sure they were immediately excited.
Well, my dog had passed away, and I was very upset about it. I love dogs, and I can't, putting them down is a horrendous thing. So anyway, I wrote a book called Rescuing Spray.
Great book.
That shot up the New York Times list. So they said, don't start your other book yet. Keep talking about rescuing. So I sat there so this book, Liberty and Tyranny, I just said, I got to write a book that, number one, explains conservatism, the basic outlines of conservatism, Because all these guys running for other talk, I'm a conservative, and they're rhinos. They're not conservatives. So I don't need to talk about running for office or the Republic. Let me try and formulate a concise, understandable, rational explanation about conservatism. And in order to do that, you need to kind of do the same thing about its opposite. And I refused at the time. I do it now. I call progressivism because if you don't, people don't know what you're talking about. But in that book, I said, no, I'm not calling it progressivism. It's statism. So I called it statism. And I went through various chapters addressing various issues, and I had a sort of play on words, a conservative manifesto at the end of the book. Damn thing shot through the roof. It came out about the same time as the Tea Party movement.
Providential,
I have a timing thing.
Yeah,
don't I?
you do.
You're going to explain it in a minute.
I will.
I mean, the book comes out in March. The Tea Party was what, February? Something like that?
February.
And everybody in the Tea Party's buying the book, reading the book, waving the book around. That sold 1.5 million copies of it.
That became, and I would say providentially, the manifesto for the movement. If you were in the Tea Party movement, you had to buy that book.
When I finished that book, I said, I think it's pretty good, but what the hell do I know? And I sent it to my dad. And I didn't hear from him for a week. And he called me and said, that's a hell of a book, son. He said, you're going to sell 1 million copies. Nobody sells 1 million copies of a book. I said, yeah, you're my dad. He said, watch my work. And there you have it. So what I do, look, I start the book. I have a general idea where I want to go, but sometimes when you do research, it moves you in another direction. You know this, Tom Coburn. It's just the way it is. There's certain things I want to get into the book, certain concepts. I keep notepads. I do whatever I need to do. I don't pretend to invent every new idea. I don't pretend to invent any new idea. I just feel like I need to express it, use my platforms to advance the cause of liberty.
So I will tell a story about...
So I'm going to tell you an embarrassing story.
I'm going to tell you a little story about the book that launched the Convention of States movement.
Can I stop you a second?
Yeah.
There's my beautiful wife, Julie.
Absolutely. Can I say something about her? So I got to tell you, he was pretty good before Julie. He's unbelievable post-Julie.
He was what?
You were pretty good before her, but after her, no comparison. Mark 2.0, a lot better.
Yeah.
So, when Mike Ferris and I started up and Tim Dunn and Eric O'Keefe and Mike Ruthenberg and Penny, there was just a small group started up the Convention of States project. We had decided to go forward with this thing. It's this nascent little project, and we're trying to figure out how to get it started, and it's going to be slow. We'd hired, I think, 2 or 3 employees. We had a little office in Purcellville, right by Patrick Henry College, and we're just getting everything sort of started up, and we had not launched yet. And I appeared on a talk show panel that Hugh Hewitt put on in Tucson, Arizona. It was called Constitution on Fire. There were 3 of us on the panel. Hugh was hosting the panel. I don't even remember who the other guys were. But this incredible thing happened, which we didn't know when it was going to happen, but Mark Skyped into the panel from the bunker, right? Very cool opportunity. So Mark Skypes in, and Hugh tells us, look, each of you is going to get to ask Mark a question. Now, being the promotional guy that I thought this is an incredible idea to ask Mark a very self-serving question. I'm going to ask Mark what he thinks about Article 5, right? Because I'm about to launch this project. How cool would it be if Mark said Article 5 was a good thing? Now, Mark and I, by the way, had talked about Article 5 sometime previously, and he told me it was a really bad thing. So it might have been a risky strategy. But I did ask the question. So Mark comes up on the screen. There's a screen that I can actually see, and he's sitting there. He's got his baseball cap on and looking all casual, and he talks to us a little bit. We get to ask a question. And I say, Mark, I feel like we've lost our government. We elect the people that we think are going to do the things we want them to do. They go to Washington, D.C., and they don't do those things. And so I think what we have to do is we have to use Article 5 of the Constitution and call a convention of states, because I think that's the only way we're going to recover our government. And Mark gave what to me is one of the most amazing Mark Levin answers I've ever heard in my life. And he's given a lot of amazing answers. And I'm going to do my best to quote you verbatim. He said, I think that Well, I'm writing a book, and I can't. It's embargoed. I can't talk about that. But I agree with you. That was the entire answer. And I thought, wait, what was that? What was that? I don't know what just happened. And did he like that? Or did he not? That was weird. What was that? And it went to the next person to ask the question. And I could still see Mark on the screen, and he was looking down while the next person was asking him the question. And I had my phone sitting on the table in front of me up on the dais, and my phone buzzes, and it's Mark. And he says, "We need to talk." He's amazing this way. I can text him during his show, and while he's talking, he's texting me back. And so Mark texts me, and I'm thinking, okay, well, that's good. He's really excited. He wants to talk to me. This is fantastic, right? That's the best thing that could possibly happen. And so he says, call me when you're done. So as soon as we're done, I'm just excited. You guys know I normally hang out to the very end. I bolt out. I go out to the lobby. I dial Mark up. And as soon as he answers the phone, he's yelling at me. Have any of you ever heard Mark yell? It's that. Only it's at me, and he's saying, how dare you, and I can't believe you did that, and do you have any idea what you just did, and you might have caused me to breach my contract, and my book is embargoed, and you had absolutely no right. And I'm trying to talk, and I'm sure if anybody's watching me, what they're hearing is, and finally, he stops, and he takes a breath, and I say, Mark, I have no idea what you're talking about. And there's a long pause. He goes, what do you mean? I said, I have no idea what you're talking about. He says, why'd you ask me that question? And I said, because me and Mike Ferris are starting this thing called the Convention of States Project, and we're using Article 5. We're going to get people together. Mike's the homeschool guy. He's got a network. I'm the Tea Party guy. I got a network. And we're going to get together, and we're going to build this movement. We're going to call it Convention of States. And there's just silence. And Mark says, my book is called
The Liberty
Amendments, and it's about Article 5. And I can't believe you guys are doing this. And he said, and I'll never forget these words, because he said, that's not a coincidence. That's providence. Somebody's holding it up back there.
Well, I don't remember it that way, but I apologize.
So Mark has been an incredible friend to me and to the movement. You know, there are a lot of people who occasionally talk about Convention of States. There are people that we've paid advertising dollars to talk about Convention of States. There's only one guy who lives and breathes this because he knows it will save the country. And what he really cares about is saving the country. And I want to close with that. That's my good friend, Mark Levin. God bless you, brother.
God bless you. Thank you. Thank you.
There's one more thing. I got to do one more thing before you leave. This is a pretty big deal, Mark. So, you know, you saw those challenge coins go out, right? And so
You lost it.
I lost the challenge coin. Yeah, where is the challenge coin? No, I don't have a challenge coin. But you saw these challenge coins go out, and I had a volunteer, and this volunteer, one of our volunteers, is a challenge coin recipient. And so she's from Minnesota. She's one of our incredible leaders. She's our state leader from Minnesota. I'm looking for my glasses here so I can read this appropriately. And she wanted me to read this to you tonight as a challenge coin recipient. Her name's Jackie Burns. She's from Minnesota. She says, because of your words to a caller one night, I was inspired to step into the volunteer role I signed up for a year prior. Last summer, I was awarded a COS challenge coin. Truthfully, I owe it to you and my team. I'd like to invite Jackie Burns up because she says, please accept my challenge coin as a reminder that your words fall on fertile ground. With my undying love and respect.
God bless you, Mark. God bless.
I want you to keep it.
No, as a
Dennis, are you going to do it or no?
What's that? That's yours?
I don't want to take her.
Well, let me just tell you.
Yeah.
The caller that night said, you know, Mark, what you should do, and you went off on him. And you said, what do you mean what I should do? I wrote a whole book for you called The Liberty Amendments. What are you doing? That was my defining moment. I thought, how long, Jack? God said to me, are you going to pretend like he's not talking to you? So I want you to know that all those idiots that call, I was one of them, and this is your reminder that your words fall on fertile ground.
Oh, my
Please.
God. Well, thank you very much, sweetheart.
Rachel's out.